Night, thank you.
Thank you. Jason Leach, could be a year.
Yeah, sobering stuff.
Sobering. Now, up and down the country, medical professionals have been preparing for the impact of coronavirus. Thousands of retired doctors and nurses have been asked to re-register so they can help with what's to come.
But what's it like on the front line right now for those currently in the medical profession? Well, joining us live, I'm pleased to say, on the line is consultant here in Glasgow, Dr. David Chung. He is the Vice President of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine. Dr. Chung, thanks for your time tonight. So what's it like on the front line at the moment?
At the moment, Scotland is fortunate. We are about 6 days to a week or so behind England. And those of you who might be following the news there can see that things are accelerating very quickly. That's given us some cause for concern, but we know we've got a little bit of time to finish off our preparations to make sure we're in the best place we can be to meet the challenge which is coming our way very, very soon.
If people are out for pints tonight, what do you make of that?
Well, the advice has been quite clear. The epidemiological advice, the scientific advice, it's a bad idea. It's very hard to change human behaviour sometimes, and people are very bad at taking advice. But we do know, as Dr. Leach said just there, Professor Leach, that this is about saving lives. Maybe not yours, but maybe somebody you love. It is that serious. Wash your hands, take the advice, no close contact. The stakes cannot be overstated here.
You mentioned that people will be watching the news from London and even the news from Italy, where things are pretty scary. Are you, as a profession, are you bracing yourselves right now?
Yes, of course we are. Anybody looking at that would be worried, they would be concerned. But what we are doing is we have faced that fear that we have and tried to diminish it by hard work and planning. I have been so impressed by my colleagues in the NHS in Scotland, seeing how far we've come in the past 7 or 8 days. There have been seismic changes. Things that have been impossible for several years have been achieved in 48 hours because the will is there, the money is there, people are rolling their sleeves up and getting ready to battle this.
David, can you talk to the audience and tell them you've got enough ventilators and oxygen?
I'm not going to answer that question in such a way because I would always want more ventilators. I want more oxygen. I don't think there's a healthcare service in the world which has got enough to deal with what's coming towards it. Germany is probably the best in Europe, and they have about 4 times as much as us. What we have done, which is impressive in its own way in the space of time we've taken what we've had, we've definitely doubled it, and we're aiming to treble it by the time things are peaking. I know for a fact that there are orders for more ventilators. We know there's stuff happening up and down the country. So I would like more ventilators. I'm not satisfied. I would like more personal protective equipment. We are not satisfied. It will not be enough. We cannot have too much of that. But we are already starting to do the things we need to do to get enough, to start to get the ball rolling so we can meet things. Because as we've heard, this is going to be a long haul. We're going to need more. We haven't got as much as we'd like to be starting from, but give it 3 or 4 months, maybe we'll be getting where we need to be.
Can you explain some of the changes then that have taken place in hospitals around the country, perhaps some of the practical things that you've seen happen?
Right. So to deal with this, what we're going to need to do is divide up the way our hospitals work into what we're calling hot zones and cold zones. Those are the terminology. Basically for people who we think have got a COVID infection and trying to isolate them from people who we think are okay and don't have COVID, have normal health problems. And we need to be very careful that we don't neglect people who are having things like heart attacks and strokes and normal pneumonia that's not COVID related, because this will all happen. And in previous epidemics, these people have a risk of being neglected. So virtually every hospital, in fact, everyone that I know of, are instituting 2 different streams so they can keep what's called a hot zone for people and we can deal with the potential COVID infections there, and a cold zone. If you have somewhere where maybe you have 2 hospitals close together, we maybe should follow the example of what they've been doing in Southeast Asia. They learned some hard lessons from SARS. They opened and have planned for having fever hospitals, which is basically the same thing, somewhere where you're going to treat patients like this. So you might find in some places they're going to have plans where there's going to be a COVID hospital, which would in some ways be an ideal. But virtually everywhere that I know of, that my colleagues in emergency medicine, acute medicine, critical care, paediatrics, we are all planning to have hot zones and cold zones, staff them, try and keep the patients separate and do our best for everybody that comes through our doors.
And roughly, David, how many people are you projecting to come through some of these hospitals, and when does it all happen?
Well, as I said, I think we're going to start seeing peaks quite soon, within about 5 days, if we're lucky. If we're unlucky, maybe quicker than that. I think numbers-wise, we've seen some very big drop-offs in the amount of people attending emergency departments and being admitted to hospital in the past week or 10 days. So maybe the initial overall numbers might not be a huge difference, but we are going to see, certainly as we get into the next 4 to 6 weeks, the overall numbers are going to go up. I couldn't honestly say a projection, because something like that is a bit doomed to failure. But I think we need to be ready to take, okay, on a bad day, 50, 60, 70 COVID infections potentially in an average sized district general hospital. And we are preparing for that. We're going to have to work very hard, but that is a kind of figure we are looking at and we're going to prepare for.
David, you as a doctor, as you and your peers as professionals will be used to working in these kind of environments, but never really having faced something like this. How are your colleagues bearing up and in themselves? How are they at the moment?
One of the things that has given me real optimism and hope for this, what is going to be a very difficult time, is seeing how my colleagues are stepping up to the mark. There are some people you knew would always be there, but there are people who maybe you might have thought aren't going to be there, but they're coming forward as well. So I have been absolutely delighted to see the teams that are there. There's only teamwork, brains, guts. That's going to get us through this. And I'm already seeing people who are willing to display all three of those and more to do what they can to keep the NHS in Scotland as afloat as it can be, and to try and do as business as usual as much as possible. We know things are going to be different. This is like uncharted territory. We've never been here. But all we can do is try our best, try and keep the head, keep going, because if we keep going, as Professor Leach has said, it is going to end at some point.
OK, some reassuring words to end on. Thank you very much, Dr. David Chung.
We wish you well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seriously wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you.